My name is Blair. Thank you for joining us at today's Financially Fearless webinar on how to boost your pension potential. I work here at HL alongside our Financially Fearless ambassadors and team to help make it easier for everyone to save and invest for a better future. Obviously, this is a popular webinar because personal finance is high on everyone's agenda at the moment, though we often spend more time thinking about how much we're bringing in rather than what we're going to do with it once we have it. But today's session is all about pensions, and we hope by the end of it you'll be able to have some more insight and knowledge to approach your pension with a bit more confidence. Today, we're incredibly lucky to have Helen Morrissey, our Head of Retirement Analysis at HL, with us to help us go through the session. Helen's wealth of knowledge and experience is second to none, so there is no one better positioned to guide us through today's session and the world of pensions. Before I hand over to Helen and we get started, just to say, if you do have any questions, please do submit them today during the session using the Q&A element that's available to us. I will endeavour to answer as many as possible during the final section of the webinar. I must also state before we start that the webinar itself is not personal advice. So if you're unsure what is right for you, please do seek financial advice. So I won't delay us any further. Without further ado, I'll hand over to Helen.
Thank you very much for such a great introduction there, Blair. And thank you everybody for taking the time to join us for today's Financially Fearless webinar on how to get the most from your pension. So basically what we're going to be talking about today, I'm going to give you a quick overview on some of the big challenges that women are facing when it comes to building up not just their pension wealth, but their wealth, in particular, the Kickstarter for us launching the Financially Fearless campaign. I'll take you through the various different types of pensions that you may well want to include as part of your retirement planning, as well as looking a little bit more widely as well. So I'll probably spend the next 35 or so minutes going through all of that. And as you say, we've got time at the end for questions. So Blair, if you can move us on to the next slide, that would be wonderful. Okay, and so basically, the reasoning really behind, us launching Financially Fearless is that we've really looked to engage more women with their pensions and investments and get them really kick-started on their savings journey. Now, the reasons for this is that money is very much a feminist issue. The gender pay gap is much discussed in the media. And obviously this is the difference between the average pay that a man gets versus what a woman gets. And, there is some disparity between the two. And, we all know that if you are paid less, then you have less money to set aside to improve your financial resilience. Added to this, we have different kind of working patterns in that women are far more likely than men to work part-time. So if we see, again here on this slide, 37% of women work part-time according to recent government stats. This compares to 14% of men. And again, as you're saying, if you're working part-time, by and large, you're earning less money, and that just leaves you less to set aside for your future. Now, there's lots of reasons for this shift to part-time work that women overwhelmingly have to do. And obviously key amongst that is what we call the motherhood penalty. And what tends to happen is that women early on in their careers, a lot of the data shows that early on, they contribute to their pensions just as much as men do, really. But what tends to happen is once they take time out of the workforce to have children, this is where the gap really starts to widen. So for a start, you will have time out of the workforce, during maternity leave, that could be a year, could be more. And women, they either don't return to the workforce or they return part-time, as we've shown earlier. And even if women do return, you tend to find that their career trajectory slows as a result of their juggling their caring responsibilities. And as I say, over time, all of these things conspire to mean that they get paid less and there is less money, as I say, to set aside into your pensions and your other investments. Just another thing that I wanted to highlight as well is that, COVID, the COVID pandemic is very much kind of, in the past, thankfully. But it did have a real hidden impact again on women's finances. Now, obviously, COVID was characterised by a lot of people being made redundant. There was a lot of furlough, but then there was also the dreaded homeschooling that everyone was talking about. And what the kind of data has shown is that all of these things, women were affected far more by men. So they were more likely to be furloughed, far more likely to be, made redundant, and they did take on the bulk of those homeschooling as well as caring responsibilities. And again, that impacts their ability to work. If we move on to that next slide, please, Blair. Thank you. And all of these challenges, have been a real kind of, factor behind us launching the Financially Fearless campaign, because as I say, it's helping women to kickstart their journeys, empowering them to save, to invest, and to really kind of build on their futures. And you'll see we've got some QR codes there. If you want to zap that, you can find us on Instagram. There's a lot of content, there's a lot of articles on managing your money. So do feel free to kind of get on board, and hopefully we'll see you kind of engaging with some of our Instagram content or reading some of the stuff that we've got on the website. So next slide, thanks, Blair. So I've highlighted the challenges that women face, in the workforce that kind of affect kind of how they work and how much money they have, and all of this has conspired to put a massive gap in women's pensions. And I mentioned earlier on, we talk a lot about the gender pay gap, but not enough is talked about the gender pension gap. And you will see here some really quite scary looking stats here from Now Pensions that showed the average female pension pot back in 2022 was 69,000. Now, if you compare that to the average male pension pot, it's almost 206,000. So there's an absolutely massive gulf between the two. So as you say, these early kind of challenges in women's careers kind of are really kind of hitting the bottom line when it comes to retirement. And this data, there's done various kind of iterations of it since, but one of the more startling data points that they've highlighted is that it will take women on average 19 years to catch up to an equivalent man's pension. So if we talk about the modern workplace pension market, where people are auto-enrolled at the age of 22, if a man is auto-enrolled at the age of 22, it would mean that a girl would have to be auto-enrolled at the age of 3 in order to be level pegging with their male counterpart. And that really brings it home to me, kind of the scale of the issues that many women are facing when it comes to building their financial resilience. Next slide. And so again, I mean, I feel like I'm kind of very doom and gloom at this point in the presentation, but it does get better, I promise. Not only are women, saving less into their pensions, they actually outlive men by and large. So again, I've kind of pulled some recent data stats for you to have a look at, and on average, women outlive men by 4 years. And if you look at any of the data available, showing people over the age of 90. 7 out of 10 of those people are women. So when we look at the scale of the challenge, if women want to draw the same pension income as men, they actually need more pension wealth by the time they hit retirement. Whereas the reality is, as you say, that they're earning an awful lot less. So that is a real challenge. What we've also got going on at the moment, which I'm hoping is a problem that will dissipate over time, is that 50% more women than men are heading towards retirement with no private pension saving. And this kind of comes back to those pre-auto enrolment years where many people could go through their working life without having a workplace pension, and it meant that people approached retirement solely dependent on the state pension. And again, that final data point there, roughly 1.2 million women will be reliant on that. And just for context, the full new state pension right now is just over £11,500. Now, even the thriftiest of people are going to find it hard to manage on that amount of money alone. So it really highlights the importance of building up your pension income wherever possible. Next slide. Okay, so what can you do to close the gap? And what I want to say, first and foremost, is the gender pension gap. It's not women's fault. It really, this is a workplace issue, and we need to see reform if we want to see kind of big changes. We need to see reform. We need to see the provision of good quality, affordable childcare to help women remain in the workforce for as long as they need to, and to enable them to build up those pensions. But there are things that you can do to close the gap and improve your situation. So the first thing that I would always say to people is, are you making the most of the contributions that your employer is paying into your pension? So with workplace pensions under auto enrolment, the minimum being paid into your pension is 8%, and that tends to be split. 5% will come from the employee, and the remaining 3% tends to come from the employer. Now, there are some employers that are willing to go above and beyond that, and this is known as the employer match. An example of that would be if they said, you're currently paying 5% of your pension, contribution now, Helen, but if you increase it to 6%, well, we'll increase ours to 4 or maybe even 5%. And if your employer does do this, it can be a really good way of significantly boosting how much goes into your pension without necessarily putting in a lot more yourself. So if you are in a position where your employer does offer an employer match and you've got some spare cash to put away, then that can be a really, really good way of kind of building out your pension. The second thing I would say is, if you are lucky enough to get like a pay increase, whether that be through an annual pay review or through getting a new job, it's a pay increase, it's money that you've never had. And if you are in a position to do so, siphoning some of that off into an increased pension contribution can really pay off over time. The third thing I would say is, if you go on maternity leave, I know babies are expensive and money is very tight, but if you are able to continue to contribute to your workplace pension, that's a really, really good way of maintaining your pension savings while you're out of work. And the reason why I say this is that even though your contribution will go down when you go on to statutory maternity, your employer has to keep contributing at the same level that they always did. So it is a good way, as I say, of keeping that pension going during a period of time where you might not have done so. We talk about the employer and their role in kind of contributing to people's pensions, but there's other people who can help as well. And particularly if you're not currently working, your partner can pay up to £2,880 per year into your pension. And in addition to doing that, that contribution will get a government top up of 20%, rounding it up to £3,600 a year. That's from the government. It's a process called pension tax relief. And so if you work together as a family, if your family finances allow it, that is a good way of ensuring that your partner is contributing to their pension and you continue to contribute to yours as well. I've mentioned auto enrolment. If you're over the age of 22 and you're earning over £10,000 per year, you are also enrolled into that workplace pension. But if you are earning less than £10,000, you can still request to join your employer scheme. And obviously £10,000 is not very much, but what I'm thinking of here is, people who maybe have a couple of part-time jobs, and when they look at their overall income, they think to themselves, well, actually, I can afford to put a bit aside into my pension. Just to let you know, you won't be auto-enrolled, but it doesn't mean you can't ask to be included in that workplace pension scheme. So it's a really, really important thing to think about. And finally, I would just say, the earlier you can start on your pension saving journey, the better. We run research very, very regularly. We ask people what their top retirement regret is. It is always, always not starting early enough. So the sooner, the better. Next slide, please, Blair. And so obviously I've talked about the workplace pension, and that is key to, very, very many people's, retirement planning. But, there are other things that you can do as well. And the state pension I will talk about very shortly, forms the backbone of the vast majority of people's retirement income. But there's things that you can do over and above that as well to improve your resilience, not just in retirement, but during your working life too. I want to say first and foremost, the emergency fund. We kind of say it's a great idea to have between 3 and 6 months worth of salary saved in like an easy access account. And this is kind of to really help you deal with those emergencies. It's the boiler breaking down, it's the car needing repairs, it's the the snap redundancy that takes you unawares. Knowing that you can kind of meet those short-term kind of financial needs without maybe resorting to debt is a really good kind of firm basis for your financial resilience that makes you better able to plan for the future as well, because you've got that backup. If you do have money that you maybe don't need for 5 to 10 years, there's also the option of the stocks and shares ISA. You can drip money into that. You don't have to be rich. There's this conception that to be an investor, you've got to be rich. You don't. You can put in small sums as and when available, and over time that can really kind of boost your overall kind of financial outlook. And then just a final thing up at the top there, private pensions. So obviously we talk about workplace pensions, but there is a role for the private pension, the self-invested personal pension, for instance, in people's financial planning. And this could be primarily, if you're self-employed, for instance, you're not included in auto enrollment, you don't have a workplace pension. So, you will be looking to kind of the personal pension market to set up a pension. You might find also that if you've had several jobs and you've accumulated several different pensions along the way, you might find that you want to consolidate them into one vehicle, in which case, a SIP or, personal pension you could well be a good vehicle for that. And then you might just want to have a private pension over and above what you have in the workplace too. So there's plenty of ways that, that can be factored into your overall planning. Next slide, please, Blair. So I said I would talk about the state pension, and this, as I say, this is such a hugely important part of people's retirement planning, and you need to make sure that you're getting the most from it. So the full new state pension currently sits at just over 11,500 per annum. So, it's going to be a real kind of foundation of what you're living on in retirement. As it currently stands, your state pension record is based on your national insurance contribution history, and you need at least 10 years to qualify for a state pension, and theoretically you need 35 years worth to qualify for the full new state pension. However, what tends to happen is many people have gaps in their national insurance record, and it's always a good idea to kind of have a look in advance to see where those gaps might have occurred and to see what you might be able to do about it. So I would say get yourself a state pension forecast first and foremost. The link to it is there. So gov.uk, check state pension. And that will give you really important information, such as, how much you're on track to receive with regards to state pension, what your state pension age is, but it will also give you your national insurance contribution history. So you can check it, make sure it's correct. If it's not correct, you can contact the DWP to make sure that is worked together to kind of get that sorted. But also it will show you where there are gaps. And if you do have gaps, for instance, you might have been out of the country, you might have been out of the workforce, as I say, looking after children, for instance, or elderly relatives. But there are ways that you can fill it. So first and foremost, if you look at where those gaps are in your record and you think to yourself, was there a time during that period where I could have qualified for a benefit? So say if you were looking after, your own children, for instance, you might not have claimed child benefit, for instance, when you should have done, you can potentially fill these gaps through the benefits system, because a lot of benefits come with an automatic national insurance credit. So I've mentioned their child benefit is a really, really big one. Universal credit is another. Job seekers allowance is another. But again, on the gov.uk website, there's a big list of the benefits that have this voluntary national insurance credit attached to it. If you find that is the case, then you can see if you can backdate a claim and to get those credits put on your record for free. What I will say though is that some of these backdated claims, they are time limited. So to kind of bear that in mind, you double check that when you're looking to backdate a claim. Now, once you've looked at what you can do through the benefits system, there is the opportunity to actually pay for voluntary national insurance contributions to fill those gaps. It currently costs around £850 to £900 to fill a 1 year gap. Partial years cost a bit less, so that could be an easier way of filling in gaps if you've got some partial years. But doing that tends to be a very cost-effective way of boosting your state pension entitlement. Now, ordinarily, you can buy them going back the last 6 tax years. However, if you're a man born after April 1951 or a woman born after April 1953, you have the opportunity to backfill until going back as far as 2006. So, that's a really great opportunity there to fill some of those long-lasting gaps. What I will say to you though is that this is a time limited opportunity. It runs out in April 2025. So you've got some time to look at it. But if you leave it to the last minute, the DWP phone lines tend to go into meltdown. So try and leave yourself plenty of time to do it. You can contact the Future Pension Centre, do it on the phone. They've also launched an online service that enables you to do it. What I would say though is before you hand over any money to fill these gaps, check that you genuinely will benefit from it. So there's certain kind of quirks in the old pension system that means that sometimes you might not. So if you were contracted out of the basic state pension system, you might find that even making these extra contributions doesn't help you. So contracting out, as I say, it's been abolished, but it will still affect quite a lot of people for some time to come. And under the old basic state pension system, you had your core state pension amount, but then there was also what was known as a state second pension or additional pension, which was a top up. Now, under contracting out, you could contract out of that top up in exchange for paying less national insurance. And what would often happen is the money you saved there would go into your workplace pension. So what you might find is that you want to kind of pay for these extra voluntary national insurance contributions, but it won't actually improve your state pension forecast because you've had all you could from the national insurance that you paid. But as I say, by and large, you will have had an increase to your workplace pension off the back of it as well. But it is just something that does crop up quite a lot that you need to be aware of before you do that. Even if you do hand over the money to the DWP in error, obviously you can claim it back, but obviously it's a hassle that you don't need. So it always pays to check before you pay over the money. Next slide. Okay, so I've looked at the state pension system. We've looked at workplace pensions, and why bother with a personal pension? And as I mentioned before, there's very many ways in which a personal pension can really help with your retirement planning. So, if you're self-employed, as I say, if you're looking to consolidate pensions together, or if you just wanted something to kind of set on top. And, what makes a personal pension so good? And one of the key, a real hidden hero of the pension system that we don't talk about enough is pensions tax relief. And Blair, if you just click on something, there should be an extra. Here we go. So this is the real hidden hero that we just don't talk about enough in pensions as well. Makes it such a tax efficient way to prepare for your future. So if you're a basic rate taxpayer, and you're paying into your pension, for every £80 that you pay in, the government will top that up by £20 to 100. It gets even better if you're a higher rate taxpayer, because for every £60 you're paying in, you're getting a £40 top up from the government in form of tax relief. It gets better again if you're a top rate taxpayer, because it's for every £55 that you pay in. And as I say, this is a real huge incentive for saving into, whether it be workplace pensions or personal pensions, because that's a lot of extra money going into your pension. And more people need to know the benefits of that, basically. Next slide, Blair. Oh, final bit. Excellent. And as I say, if you do decide to go down the option of that personal pension, whether it's a personal pension or a SIPP, there are kind of key things that you need to kind of be aware of if you are choosing you have a SIPP or a personal pension. I would say first and foremost, watch the costs, keep costs low where you can. Don't pay for services that you don't need. Just always kind of be asking, do I need that? And how much does it cost? Is it really going to benefit me? Making sure that you're getting value out of what you're getting. If there's bells and whistles that you're really going to make good use of, then by all means, that could be a really good value opportunity for you. But just compare that. Secondly, diversification, and here I'm talking about your investment strategy as part of your pension. And you're investing for the long term. You want it to grow over time, but you also want to try and protect it wherever possible, when the market is volatile. And this is where good diversification often plays a role. And when I say diversification, it's ensuring that your investments are invested across a wide array of asset classes, equities, bonds, but also across a wide array of different geographical areas. And the idea being that if one area is under pressure and maybe not performing so well, there's other areas in your portfolio that are performing better and will support it. So you're keeping that growth going, with and kind of offering some kind of protection against the downsides of market volatility. And the core and satellite approach is one way of doing that, where you have one core fund, could be a tracker, tracking an index, that gives you that steady, stable growth over time. And then you might opt to have kind of, other kind of investments around that, which, look to kind of give you a little bit more growth. It could be, alternative assets, for instance, like property. It could be investments in individual companies like shares, but that is kind of one option. But, diversification is really important. And I mentioned another key thing for getting the SIPP, is the consolidation argument. And there's been a lot of kind of research and data that shows, I think the average person has 11 different jobs in their lifetime. So the chances are you've accumulated several pensions over that period. And you might have moved house, you might not have updated your contact details, and this means that you could be missing out on thousands of pounds that could be going into your pension and improving your retirement outlook. And there's been a lot of research into this. There's an estimated £26 billion of pension money washing around the system, that could be put on, that could be, being claimed and kind of, helping people make the most of their, retirement income. So what I would say a really important thing to do to get the most out of your pensions is to sit down, write down every employee you've had, and then work out if you've had pensions with them. Make sure that you've got pensions paperwork from them. And if there's any gaps, contact the government's pension tracing service. Now, they won't be able to tell you if you have a pension or not. You need to go to them with either your old employer's name, or company name rather, or the pension provider's name, and they will give you contact details so you can get in contact with them and try and track down those pensions. And as I say, choose to consolidate it all into one. It can really cut down on time, it can cut down on admin, it can cut down on costs. And I also find that having an overarching view of how much you've got allows you to plan better rather than having little pots here, there and everywhere. However, there are really important things that you do have to consider before you consolidate. So make sure, first and foremost, that you're not missing out on any important benefits by consolidating. So one example of that could be guaranteed annuity rates that would give you a better increased income in retirement. And if you were to consolidate that pension into a SIPP, you would miss out on that. Don't do that without thinking, and potentially miss out on extra cash. The other thing is that maybe some older style pensions might have exit fees attached to them. Don't get yourself stung with a bill that you don't need to. Double check, if there are any hidden horrors or hidden benefits to the pensions that you've got, before you consolidate, just to make sure that you're doing the right thing for you. Next slide. And so, as you say, once you've got kind of your pensions together and you're contributing regularly and everything, and you're keeping on track, there's other things that you need to do just to make sure that the system's working as well for you as possible. And this is a really important one, is to give some thought as to what happens if you pass away. If you've got a family, if you've got a partner, the last thing you want is, if you were to pass away unexpectedly, for them to have delays, because obviously you can pass on your pension to your loved ones. You don't want there to be any delays in them receiving those pensions or death benefits because there's been a confusion as to who should get what. Now, with all your pensions, you should have an expression of wish form, and this allows you to stipulate who you want to get your death benefits when you die. It only takes a few minutes. You can often do them online, so check on your provider's websites. It's well worth doing it, but also once you've done it once, it's really important to keep it updated, because life changes. You could live with somebody, split up with them, marry someone else, get divorced, get together with somebody else, have children with them. You need to make sure that expression of wish form is updated to make sure that you're not in that awful position where an ex-wife or husband is named on this form, whereas you've set up a relationship with somebody else who you would prefer to have that money. People don't need those delays, they don't need those upsets, and for the sake of kind of updating this form, takes 2 minutes. It gives you and your family real peace of mind. Next slide. And again, other really important considerations around your pension. So I mentioned that dreaded divorce word earlier on, and this is a really important issue that doesn't get talked about enough. So obviously, when people get married, you expect to stay together forever, and you plan together as a couple. And what can potentially happen is, if your partner has really generous pension provision, you may decide as a couple that you're going to rely on that, and this can mean that you then don't build up your own pension provision yourself. Now, if you stay together forever, that might be fine, but if you are to split up, you can find many people approach retirement with little, if any, pension for them to live on. Now, obviously, the ideal thing is you would build up your own pensions, over your own working life, and that you would have that independence and flexibility that comes with that. But if you do find yourself in a position where you have very much relied on one person's pension, and you are coming up to divorce, you need to make sure that pensions are part of that discussion. There are ways and means that pensions can be split on divorce, but it's an issue that isn't discussed anywhere near enough, and it does risk really undermining women's retirement resilience in particular. The other thing I'd like to say is that your pension, it has real power. You're invested in the stock markets, and you have the ability to direct your pension investment in the way that best meets your ethics and your beliefs. You have the potential for that. And I think it's really important that if you do have kind of very if you do have strong beliefs as to where you should be invested, it might be that you don't want to be invested in oil and gas or something like that. That if you're interested in that being a part of your pension investment strategy, then do bring that up with your pension provider, see what they can offer you. Pension providers can offer a lot of variety and opportunity for you to invest in line with your values. The other thing I really want to mention here is self-employed people. I think I've mentioned them briefly in this presentation, but it's a really important group in that I mentioned auto enrolment. It's a workplace pensions initiative, but it's not an initiative that encompasses the self-employed. They're not automatically enrolled into a pension. They have to sort it out themselves, and this can cause challenges. In terms of people having the confidence to kind of choose the provider, investments, etc. But it is really important that you do prepare for retirement. And what we've kind of seen in a lot of the data is that self-employed people, they do tend to be quite hesitant about pensions, and I think there's a few reasons for that. And one, I think, is there's a concern about contributing regularly over time because their income can be maybe a bit more volatile, and they're worried about keeping up their pension contributions. The second thing is that they worry that if work was to dry up, that money is tied up until the age of 55 and they can't reach it. So it does mean that often self-employed people will look to invest elsewhere. But as I say, with a pension, there are some kind of, the great kind of tax efficiencies of, tax relief and things like that. That does mean that pensions are a very, very good tax efficient way of preparing for retirement. But if you are going to go down the pension route, there are other options. So you mentioned things like ISAs, but then there is also the lifetime ISA as well. Now, the lifetime ISA was developed to help young people aged between 18 and 40 either save for retirement or for their first home. Now, with a lifetime ISA, you can contribute up to £4,000 per year and get a 25% government bonus. So that would top you up to £5,000. Now, this is a great way of building up a retirement fund. And the thing with a lifetime ISA is that you can access that money, but the sting in the tail, or access it early if you need to. But the sting in the tail is that you do get walloped with an exit fee of around 25%. So that's something that you do need to be aware of when you're weighing up the pros and cons. I think I did mention when talking about self-employed and pensions as well, people worry about being able to contribute consistently. With LISAs, you contribute as and when you need to, but it's also important that check with your pension provider if you do decide to go down that route, just to say, because many of them will accept ad hoc contributions. So there's no reason to let kind of variable incomes put you off putting money away for the future. Next slide. And again, if you are in that position where, you've been able to save into your pensions and your other investments and to develop, build up a really, good retirement nest egg, this gives you so much flexibility in terms of how you retire and the manner in which you retire as well. It's really important. Now, under current rules, the earliest you can access a pension is 55. Now, that will be going up to 57 in the next few years. Now, some people do choose to start accessing their pensions from around that age. The only thing that I would say is, if we go back to earlier on in the presentation where I talked about, women living longer than men, the reality is that, many of us could be living into our 80s, 90s and beyond. That pension pot has to last you a long time. So I would say, if you can kind of delay kind of accessing it wherever possible, and that gives it more time to grow, and that gives you more money to play with in retirement. Now, age 65 has kind of been seen as the traditional retirement age for many years. And this is because for a long time, that was what the state pension age was. And so many people just kind of picked that, and, they were getting the state pension, and it was a good idea to kind of then start drawing down their workplace one too. However, state pension age has been on the move. It's currently 66. It's due to go to 67 by the end of this decade. And there's plans for it to go to age 68. Now, as I said, you know, with that full new state pension, that's £11,500. That's a big chunk of money. And many people are reliant on it to some extent in their retirement income. And you know, the concern can be is that we are living longer, but we're not necessarily living healthier longer. If you look at kind of recent healthy life expectancy, the average is around 63. So we are in a position where some people can continue to work, and that's fine, or work part-time, but there are going to be some people that hit maybe their early 60s and need to finish work, but they might have 2, 3, 4 years before they can access that state pension. And what I would say is that this is where your early saving, you know, that boost in your pension, however you can, that's when it really comes to the fore, because you can use your pensions to draw that bit of extra income to see you through that time until you contribute, until you can start drawing that state pension. So if we go on to the next slide, please, below. And again, you know, just a little bit more here about Financially Fearless. You know, this, you know, I could talk to you for hours about pensions. There's so much that we could go on about here. But, you know, our time is limited today. But, you know, as I say, we have our Financially Fearless Instagram. We've got our webpage. You can see a lovely picture of me striking a pose there on our Instagram. But, you know, please do kind of, you know, get involved, sign up to the newsletter, come and visit us on Instagram and engage with some of our content. There's top tips, there's articles on how to manage your money. And I do really hope that, you know, you can join the community and make best use of what we've got to kind of offer you. Next slide. Again, just some important information there just for you to kind of take a look at quite quickly. You know, just to go back to what Blair said at the very beginning, you know, this presentation, it's information, it's for your knowledge, it's not personal advice. You know, if you have any doubts about your future direction, if an investment is the right thing for you, for instance, you should seek personal financial advice wherever possible.